A breath of fresh air. It's Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Breaks my soul and cried. My mind is moving slow. Far from all I know. Give me time to know. My mind is moving slow.
Welcome to Sunday Sanctuary, where today we're going to talk about creating rites of passage or acknowledging rituals that we use to navigate grief after death. Allow me to welcome you like this. E ngā manu, e ngā reo, mai ngā hau e whā. Tatu mai nei ki te manga o tēnei rākau whakaruruhau. Tau mai nei ki tēnei kaupapa e pāpaho atu nei ki a koutou rā ko Sunday Sanctuary. Ko Petra Bagust tēnei, e rere ana ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa. To everyone from each corner of this country, come, rest on the branch of this sheltered tree. You are welcome to this mahi, this space, Sunday Sanctuary. I'm Petra Bagust and I acknowledge you all. And this week we're talking about sacred goodbyes, rites of passage, rituals that we use to navigate grief and death. And so here's a piece from Suleika Jawad's memoir, Between Two Kingdoms, that talks about Suleika's journey into discovering how they might create their own rituals. Taking Melissa's ashes to the place she loved most doesn't lessen the pain of losing her, but it has shown me a way that I might begin to engage with my grief. It has introduced me to the role of ritual in mourning, the ceremonies that allow us to shoulder complicated feelings and confront loss, that make room for the seemingly paradoxical act of acknowledging the past as a path toward the future. It gets me thinking about the other ways we mark the crossing of thresholds: birthdays and weddings and baby showers, baptisms and bar mitzvahs and quinceañeras. These rites of passage allow us to migrate from one phase of our lives to another. They keep us from getting lost in transit. They show us a way to honour the space between no longer and not yet. But I have no predetermined rituals. They are mine to create. And I think Suleika is saying something there. It's almost like this waking up to the idea that we have the ability to create even in the middle of pain. And look, something we'd love you to take from this episode is perhaps a deeper resonance with established rites of passage that can move us from one season to another, and an assurance that there isn't just this one right way to do something and that it can be put in a box and then it's done, tick. Grief, in fact, it's so nuanced, so complex that I hope we could have courage and confidence in our ability to create our own rituals, to sense a need and meet it, to help us transition. In future episodes, we'll explore some of life's other rites of passage, perhaps like graduating into adulthood. However, in this episode, we're gently looking into what those rituals could look like when we have lost or are losing a loved one. And we hope you feel an invitation here to create your own rites of passage or rituals to process your grief. So join me today as I hear from a friend who recently lost his dad, a rabbi, about the ritual of Shiva, a hospital chaplain, Reverend Heike Pomare, and even a threshold choir called the Cadence Singers. Now, let's take a moment for awe.
Awe, wonder, surprise, incredulity, admiration, marvel at the world we live in. It's Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Today this comes in the form of a musical motif that has been around in Western music for around 400 years, and it's still being used today. It's known as the lament bass. Here's producer Josh.
While it isn't always restricted to the bass notes of a piece of music, the lament bass is always used to evoke the feelings of sadness, loss, and grief. For those familiar with music theory, the lament bass is described as descending a perfect fourth, beginning at the tonic note of the chord, or the tonic chord of the key the piece is set in, until it finishes on the dominant note or chord. For those of us who felt that last sentence go right over our heads, just for now, think of the lament bass as a a repetitive, descending musical motif. As one example, written in 1638, Claudio Monteverdi's Lamento della Ninfa, The Nymph's Lament. You can hear the lament bass clearly being played on the piano. Another example is from Felix Mendelssohn's Ruy Blas Overture from back in 1839. Now, the lament bass has been riffed on and changed up slightly throughout its history, but it has yet to fall out of fashion. For a while, in the early 1900s, it found a new home in the blues music of the southern United States. Fast forward through the last century, and it can be heard in songs like Hit the Road, Jack by Ray Charles, the Beatles' classic Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Radiohead's Paranoid Android, and strangely, in the NSYNC classic Bye Bye Bye. One of the most recognizable places where this 400-year-old musical device has been hiding, however, is in Nicholas Hooper's score for the 6th Harry Potter movie, right after, spoiler alert, Dumbledore is killed by Snape. Go back and rewatch The Half-Blood Prince. You'll hear it this time.
I invite you now to join me in a minute or two of Examen. And for those of you familiar with the Sunday Sanctuary community, this is a small space, a sacred space to connect. And I acknowledge that sometimes it feels like we're already holding too much. We're already dealing with so much, whether it is grief, whether it is just the life around us. And so perhaps these few minutes you can connect with yourself, with perhaps your body or your breath. You can connect with the divine. For me, this is a space where I can connect to God, to acceptance. So join me. Take a moment to feel where your body is in space, to notice the edges of your tenana. Perhaps you can feel your feet in your shoes or on the ground, your hands on your lap, or a table or chair. And breathe into your belly. Ha kiroto. And out. Ha kiwaho. And again, breathe in deeper than you have all day. Ha kiroto. And out. Fill your belly with breath, with life. And release. Perhaps you take a breath in through your nose. And let it go out of your mouth. And the invitation is to turn towards your mind with kindness. Just to see the inside of your head as spacious, as a soft place to land. To allow your mind's eye to travel to your heart, your ngako. To feel it beating, metaphorically or physically, to know that life courses through you, as does pain and pleasure, heartache and hope. Allow your mind's eye to sink into your belly, to trust, to knowing, to a sense that you are part of something bigger than yourself, that you're not alone. And if possible, let go. Relax. Accept. And as you allow your breathing to return to normal, we acknowledge that life is painful at times, that loss is present, that grief is part of being alive. And so we say thank you for this moment, for this space, for this body, for this love. Thanks for joining me. I love doing that with you. So good. Coming up, I chat with Phil Guyan, who's also my boss, about his very recent journey through the loss of his dear father, Neil. But first of all, here is an audio clip from my other podcast, Grey Areas. This was an episode on inevitable grief, where Te Waka McLeod talks about weaving a whāriki with her mum before she passed. A whāriki is the mat her mother's body was later wrapped in.
It's the sacred text on Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
The idea and concept around that is that all the living get to walk in that and on that and play in that. The kids all played on the whāriki next to her hospital bed in the room. And so no one knew what that whāriki was, because you don't really think about when you're in a room with someone that's dying, what is around them. But that carried everything with Mum when she left. So when she passed away, that was the first whāriki that was wrapped around her. And as you can imagine, depending on how long that period is, knowing that she's on her way to depart this world, physical world, that went brown, like dried harakeke.
From green to brown.
Yeah. So you kind of followed that process of the green harakeke from her plants in the garden.
Yeah.
This tree to then going on the ground, becoming brown, and then her being wrapped in that. So that was her very first whāriki that was wrapped around her at home. And then during that next process was, once she had passed away, the weavers came in and wove another whāriki, which was green.
Wow.
So that was what everybody could see.
Wow.
Was this beautiful cocoon wrapping of a whāriki wrapped around Mum. And it literally looks like a cocoon, like this beautifully woven mat wrapped around Mama. And the kids wove the rope that went around her. The boys went out to the ngahere and got manuka.
Ngahere's forest.
Yeah, to get manuka. So all the boys played a part in that. So it was just like this ever-evolving, beautiful process.
This is a bit of a treat, because in the studio with me now is a man who's always in the office and is the boss of Love It Media and CBA, and a friend, and somebody who I've known for 20 plus years. I think you got me to be involved on air on News Talk ZB at a Christmas, probably, I don't know how many, a couple of decades ago at least. So I vouch for his character. Phil Guyan, thanks for moving from your office the 5 metres into the studio. The commute was how was the traffic?
Brutal.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Can we talk about the loss of your father? Was there anything that you did? Like we've talked about how for rites of passage, there are things that are established. People visit dying people and they tell them that they love them, and people celebrate the dead and remember them through celebrations or tangi or funerals. And so we have certain rituals in place, and yet we know that's not enough to contain all that we feel and all that we know and all that we love about the person who we've lost. Can you tell me, did you have things that you did or discovered along the way, as your father was very sick before he died?
I'm glad you started there, because Hearing Te Waka just now reminds me of some things that we did. And she was talking about what they were weaving before her mother died. And for me, a lot of the ritual was what happened before my dad died, as well as what came after. And the resonance there is remarkable, despite the fact that it's a completely different culture and they're doing a completely different thing. But I feel like some of the stuff that we did before Dad died was a weaving of memories.
And what did that entail?
Yeah, so there were a whole lot of things. And look, my mum once said a really profound thing when my grandmother was dying. We were walking out of the hospital, having seen my grandmother, and she was skin and bones. She was dying of cancer. And my mum said, "I hope I die of cancer." And I was like, "What? That's a crazy thing to say." And Mum said, "It gives you the opportunity to say goodbye." And my elderly neighbour, or the neighbour of who I grew up with, died 2 days before my dad, and he just dropped dead of a heart attack, whereas my dad had weeks and weeks of cancer. And so we did have this time beforehand to say goodbye, and I see that now as a gift. And so one of the things that we did that was probably the biggest was a friend suggested that we gather some people together and sing Christmas carols to my dad on the doorstep. And my dad was involved in choirs, running choirs. He was a choir master, he was a music teacher, and he used to put on a big festival of carols every Christmas. And so Christmas carols were a really big deal, and choirs and things. And we thought we'd get together some family and maybe a few friends. We thought maybe 12, 15 people. 55 people turned up 2 days before Christmas, 2 weeks before Dad died. And it was just as the sun was setting, and people turned up with candles and glow sticks and fairy lights and things, and Dad had no idea it was happening. He comes out with Mum onto the balcony, and we're all standing in the driveway, and 55 people sing Christmas carols. And we filmed it, and so I've still got recording of that. And we didn't know then. We knew he was sick, but we didn't know he only had, 2.5 weeks to go. But we did a few things kind of like that on Christmas Day. Dad played the organ for the last time at church. He was very, very sick, but he'd been an organist for 70 years. And he played the organ, and he played the closing voluntary, and suddenly everybody around the church just stopped. They realised what was going on. This was probably the last time he would sit at an organ. And he finished, and everybody clapped. It was amazing. And then there was Christmas Day and some of the kind of the family things that we do around Christmas Day. And in those final days, I sat with Dad quite a lot and asked him about the music that had been really important to him in his life. And he would mention a piece, and I'd find it on YouTube, and we'd just sit there and listen.
Brilliant.
And he would cry, and I'd cry, and all of those things feel to me like the weaving, the weaving of some really special times and memories that are just as much a part of the rites of passage as the stuff that came later with the funeral and all of the things that we've done since.
I can see how that is like weaving a mat that you wrap your father in, metaphorically, because music was so integral to who he was as a man and who he was as a person in his life, and the gift that he gave so many other people. I remember at the funeral people talking about, giving eulogies about how he gifted them this path in life to music and into performance or into teaching or into playing. And so even as you say, 55 people sang to him, he played for the last time at the church, you listened to songs together and wept. There's this sense of, a breathing and an expansion and a contraction and a wrapping of music around his last days. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
I guess finding something that you share, and I guess you can continue to listen to those songs if you want to bring back the memory of your father.
One of the most emotionally brutal, powerful, beautiful,
brutal
and undoing things was that one of those pieces of music that we sat and listened to, which was probably 2 days before he died, is the piece of music that we put on the photo montage for the funeral. And for weeks after the funeral, I'd wait till everybody had left the office, and I was the only one here, and I'd put it on and watch it, and just watch the photos with that music, and it would completely undo me. But there's a connection, a point of connection in there which you don't want to lose, and so I haven't probably watched it for a few weeks now. Sort of the time in between watching gets a little bit longer, but
Is it just following this instinct? Is it that did you feel compelled to do it, or did you just?
I think that in the letting go of somebody, there's this perhaps a little bit of a fear that you're losing them. Like there's times when I go, I can't remember his voice, or it's a few months later. Just for context, we were talking about 6-7 months ago, and you want to hang on to a little bit of them, and so you enter into that place of grief again to keep the memory alive or something, to connect again.
Connect and to let go. And I guess that sense with the loss you're talking about, when you're worried you're going to lose them, it's that you'll lose all of them forever, rather than you've already lost them in body, but you want to maintain that I guess honest, real connection that your father will always be your father and always was. Have you discovered any kind of post the death of your father, have you discovered any rituals or things that have worked for you that you've engaged in and maybe discovered, oh my goodness, this sits well, or this is important, or this is healing?
That's in probably several parts. The first bit is the week leading up to the funeral. There's so much there that I realise, and thinking about this, realise that it is kind of a ritual, a kind of a cultural thing that we probably all go through, where there's a period of maybe a week or two where people turn up with flowers, and they turn up with meals, and they turn up with, you get cards and letters and messages and all of that sort of stuff, which is, it's what you do, it's all part of the ritual. And the coming together of family. For us, a really special week was the week leading up to the funeral, where family turn up from around the country, and we have meals together, and we have conversations about what would the funeral look like. And some of those conversations where we sat around and discussed, what song and what prayer and what reading and who's going to say what, were actually like profoundly special times, because you have to talk through what did Dad love and all of those sorts of things. And we have a great family dynamic, so that was good. I know that in some families that can be a terrible time.
It can be a time of great pain. And highlighting division and wounding, probably.
Yeah. But also important to go through all of that. So preparing for that was amazing. For me, the pulling together of the eulogy was one of the most profound things I've ever done. Just night after night of writing and rewriting and reading through, some of Dad's stuff. He had some memoirs and things that I was able to draw on, and my brothers and I put it together. And then working through it with them was a very kind of bonding thing for the three of us to do. And I'd be sitting there late at night writing and reading, and then just falling apart again. But that was all part of the process as well. So the funeral is a focal point, but it's just a part of a much bigger time. And even when the funeral was over, there were more family dinners. We had a big family dinner with the extended family, which was fantastic. And then 2 days later, we had the crematorium thing, and that was a much smaller gathering of sort of extended but closer family. And then after that, we all went back to my uncle and auntie's house, and we told stories for a couple of hours. We just sat around and laughed and told stories about Dad and, some of his quirks and mannerisms and little anecdotes and things. And that was an amazing, I'll never forget just sitting around having coffee and telling stories after the funeral. That was a brilliant, after the cremation service.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was all part of it. What's interesting is that can kind of feel like the end.
That's it. On with life.
And so the second part, I think, of answering your question is some of the things that I've done since.
Yeah.
And, well, one thing I did is get my brothers together and go away for a weekend.
Oh, wow.
I said, let's do that. We've got stuff to talk about. It'd be nice to chat about Dad. One thing about when people pass away, I remember our friend John Cowan saying that it's really important to not avoid talking about the person that's died because people want to. And so I've found myself saying to people who have lost someone, tell me about your wife, tell me about your son, tell me about your mum. And they love that. And I want to do that too. And so I got my brothers together so we could talk about Dad. It was a really great weekend.
I can see it by the expression on your face. It's lit up. And it's, yeah, I guess that is, it's so fabulous that you thought of it, that you thought of let's go away for the weekend, us boys, and talk about Dad.
Yeah, it was great. It was, and bonding for us as well. And so then I also realised that I needed to do some more stuff personally. I felt like I'd taken some of that sadness and grief and just put it on the shelf, and I needed to spend some more time with it. And quite a lot of those contexts are group contexts, family, and I needed to do some more stuff on my own. And I'd heard somebody, actually one of the guys that is regularly part of Sunday Sanctuary, Spanky Moore, who'd lost his father, and he said that he'd gone away for a weekend to write a letter to his dad. And I thought, that sounds like a bit of emotional torture.
I should do that. Should get me some of that emotional torture.
Do that. And I had the opportunity to go away for a whole week, and I did that, and it was a really profound week. And one of the things that I did during that time of solitude was rewatch the funeral, because we'd videoed it, and then write a letter. It took me 3 days to write the letter, and it was really hard. But man, the stuff that it's not even that long. But the stuff that I had to engage in to write that letter was kind of pretty deep and profound as well.
So without, having to spill your guts, was there stuff in that letter which says, Dad, I wish, or Dad, Dad, why didn't you, or Dad, did it have some questions or some, pain in it?
Yes, yeah, 100%. It was very much a mix of profound gratitude and
stupid, annoying gratitude.
And yeah,
so useful, so good.
And regret.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, no matter how much time you spend with somebody and the things you do and say, there are things that you didn't say and questions you didn't ask and conversations you never quite had the courage to raise. And I don't know, that there were just things that I look back and I go, I wish I'd done that, I wish I'd said that, or wish that we'd had that conversation. We didn't. But at the same time, recognising that there were lots more things which were things that I can be very, very grateful for. And that mix is deep and hard.
And real.
But honestly, at the end of it all, I just wanted to say thank you. That was sort of my final goodbye, is to say thank you.
And I guess what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm hearing incorrectly, in making space for the regrets and for the wishes and for the if-onlys, in allowing them to exist and kind of acknowledging them for a moment, almost holding presence with them, that allows you to move towards the thank you, to actually release them almost.
Yep. I just totally agree.
I love it when people agree with me. I'm still curious that as a European Pākehā New Zealander who's a similar age to me, so shall we just say in their 50s? You're actually younger than I am.
Very, very early 50s.
Hardly 50 at all. I am curious as to what made you recognise or create space for what you knew was going to be a tough time, going away and looking at this grief and, I guess, leaning into it. Like, what is it in you that would do that? It seems surprising.
I don't know.
That's okay.
I don't know.
Do you think of yourself as emotionally brave?
No, I don't.
Emotionally very well-rounded?
I don't know. I think maybe I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by some really good people who have some really good things to say, and I've thought I'll take that on board and give it a go. Like, Spanky and the letter, I just thought that was a good idea, and I went and did it.
Maybe it's best not to know how hard it's going to be, exactly, eh? That's how I feel every time I drive when I used to go to counselling regularly. I'd be like, la, 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 driving to counselling, and as I was barking, I'd think, oh, no, this is going to hurt. This is going to be hard work.
Yeah.
But good hard work, good, deeply healing hard work.
I think, oh gosh, I don't know. That's a really good question. One I probably need to give a bit of thought to.
No, it's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to know how great you are. I'll just say that when you came back to staff meeting and you talked about the time you'd spent on your own in Australia and the letter you'd written, you said you'd grappled with anger, with all sorts of different things about being on your own and being quiet. Like it was confronting and a little bit confounding, and also, amazing in the place that it led you to. I just felt so privileged to be with somebody who was willing to go there. Like, I felt so grateful to hear the work that you'd done and to see the example it set. Like, you're modelling something that I think is so good. I believe, that if you were never to process that grief, that grief, you have to carry that around with you. And it's fine to carry some grief, but to also heal and release it is truly healing and powerful. Yeah.
Okay, I think I've got an answer then.
Ooh.
Okay, I think the answer is the alternative is worse. I know there's going to be some pain in leaning into those emotions, but the alternative is worse, which is, bottling it up, letting years pass by and never really confronting the tough stuff. I think I've tended to want to confront the tough stuff quickly, and not to say that you're then you're all fixed and you're healed and you move on and everything's great.
So you never watch that video again, that montage.
But yeah, exactly. But I think I'd rather lean into it than have it sort of, fester and turn into something negative.
I'm with you, and there's probably quite a bit of science now around the fact that in confronting and leaning into that is good, and we don't have to do that on our own. We don't have to. There's not one way. There's not a right or a wrong way. But thank you for sharing some of the ways that you have, I guess, feed yourself, that you've supported yourself and your whānau through that process of your father dying and then being remembered and celebrated for who he was. Yeah, it's very beautiful. Thanks, Phil.
My pleasure.
It can be easy to get used to things and no longer see them. So I thought it would be helpful to see this ritual of grief and honouring the death of a loved one through a different lens. And so I chatted with Rabbi Ruby from the Jewish faith for some insight into the well-established Jewish rite of passage following a death. It's called Shiva. Can I ask, for your faith tradition, about sitting Shiva? Like, can you tell us a little bit about what's put in place to, I guess, assist and support people through their this rite of passage where we lose someone we love?
That's a great question. Essentially, the process of Shiva. Shiva in Hebrew means 7. And so sitting Shiva is 7 days after the funeral where we give a space. We allow space for the person who passed away, their immediate family, their spouse, their parents, their children. I'll give them a space to grieve and fully let out their grief. And so during the Shiva, their immediate family stay in their homes. They have people over. They have services, different prayers that we say in their homes. There is a special commandment for the people in the community to come and give them consolation. Really, what they're doing at home is not being in the community, meaning we encourage them to stay by themselves and just grieve and just really, really grieve, share memories of their loved one. Also, we don't take it out. I guess it'd be the equivalent of, don't drown your sorrows in Netflix or something like that. Don't say like, I just want to forget about it. I just want to forget about this. I don't want to feel sad. Let me numb the pain. And we say, no. You sit, you grieve, you really focus on them. We keep that focus that they stay in their homes and people are coming to give them consolation. And through that, in that process, they grieve and they slowly come to terms with their loss. And hopefully through that, they're able to really immerse themselves in it and then thereby walk through it to the other side.
Can you describe what the consolation looks or sounds like when people visit the family that are in Shiva?
There's a few different things. As I said before, there's a service there where the mourners, the people who lost the family, say special prayers, and people are coming there for the services, help them recite the prayers. After the prayers, there's typically the community provides them with meals, so they have plenty of food, and everyone comes over and speaks with them. Not in the sense that they say, all right, now speak about your loved one. We sort of sit and we ask them questions. We prompt them if they want to remain silent or if they want to go away to another room and just be by themselves, it's fine. But we allow them to speak, if they wish. And we say, may the Almighty comfort you. Really, it's a sense of, we're here for you.
Yeah.
You can speak if you want. Yeah, you're basically taken care of. I'll say how it worked in my family. When my grandfather passed away,
yeah,
it was really a time when all his children came together and sat together. And, we all have our own lives, we don't really get to see each other as often as we did when we were kids. And we get together, for big family things like weddings, or this is just another one of those times where the whole family comes together. And in a way, when everyone comes together like that, that helps the grieving process. It helps us receive comfort.
Is there something that you gained specifically after your grandfather died when you were in Shiva with your close relations? Was there how would you describe the comfort you gained from that?
I wasn't the one sitting Shiva. The people who officially sit Shiva are the immediate relatives.
Yep.
So I was the grandson, but I watched my mother sit Shiva when her parents passed away, and I saw my father sit Shiva when his parents passed away. So I was just there, and it was really, it's a powerful thing, that you see that your entire family comes together, and you really kind of see your grandfather or your grandparents in that light, and the sense of, that there's, I would say, nothing else to do. We're not on a vacation and we're family and running around. We are in the house with each other, and we know what to do. Like, we're focusing on grandpa, grandma, whoever it was. And there's not a whole lot of pressure to go out or do anything or to entertain or be entertained. You're just kind of with your family, almost like the way it was when we grew up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's something very precious about that, giving each other time and there being nothing that has to be done with that time, that the time together is the treasure. Wonderful. Hey, thank you so much for giving me an insight into Shiva, and I really appreciate it. All the best for your journey. I can hear cars passing you on the road, so travel safe, my friend. Thank you.
My pleasure.
In preparation for this episode, one of my producers told me about threshold choirs. Now, I'd never heard of them before, but honestly, their work is truly sacred. Through song, they bring comfort to the bedsides of those who are dying. And we found one in Auckland. They're called the Cadence Singers, and producer Sam paid them a visit at a recent rehearsal of theirs. So that is coming up. In the meantime, please share this episode with somebody who you know would appreciate it. Feel free to rate it and review it. That always helps us.
Sunday Sanctuary, a reset for your soul.
We are all just walking each other home. We are all just walking each other home.
My name is Dara. When my mother was dying, I found myself wanting to sing to her. She is a singer, and I found I didn't have anything to sing, and so I felt we'd really lost our songs. And I know some people haven't, but certainly my family had somehow lost their songs. And what's been wonderful about being involved in Cadence Singers is that, like, my husband died relatively recently, and while he was dying, or when he was in his, we were having a ritual around that, I was able to sing. I had a song that I could sing. And so it was a very different experience.
Maybe 3 weeks ago, I'd never heard of a threshold choir. So are you able to explain briefly what a threshold choir is?
It's exactly that. It's a threshold, singing to people at a threshold of life. But our particular choir sings for the threshold of passing from the living into the wherever we go after that.
Where do the songs come from that you sing?
There are songs that are especially chosen or written for this situation. And the people, especially the ones who had set it all up in America, have done a wonderful job of writing, composing and arranging songs for us to sing. But we also sing our local songs a bit as well. We've got some Māori songs in there, and we've had a couple of the original songs actually translated into reo by somebody who was qualified to do that. Three or four of us only will be around a bedside, almost always around a bedside. And there's only 3 or 4 of us, otherwise it gets too overwhelming. That's enough for us to sing the harmonies that are create a sound effect that the idea is that the sound is very soothing and calming. We've got somebody that leads the singing, like a conductor in a way. But we also have somebody who makes sure they read the room so that we can tell when the patient is getting restless or the carers may be getting upset or restless in some way. So we always read that and are very sensitive to that.
May you dwell in the heart, may you be free from suffering.
And so you find that people still connect to the songs and what you're singing in the moment, even if they aren't necessarily songs that, say, they're already familiar with or have grown up with.
Yeah, they do. Occasionally we've got a few songs that are known and people will join in if they're able to, but these are people who are very fragile at the end of their lives, so sometimes they will hum along or make something up, but we just encourage them to close their eyes and relax and let the sound waft over them.
How common is it that you're there singing at the time that they pass away?
That has happened, but not very often. The people who are caring for them and looking after them can usually tell when it's that close, but yeah, we've had some occasions where somebody has passed.
How does it feel and what does it mean to you personally to be invited into that space and be part of someone's final weeks or days?
It feels very much like a privilege, and there is a real sense of sacred space around people when they're dying. In some ways it reminds me of when somebody's born. Everybody's very quiet and gentle in how they talk in, and it's very much the same at the end of life as well.
In the quiet of this moment, I am at peace.
It's a really lovely group of women. They're beautiful people, all of them, and very little kind of ego or drama queens at all. It's just a lovely group of women. And I get to sing, and I get to sing in harmony. It's beautiful. I think it's a peak experience to hear your voice, lending your voice to something and hearing it join with others in harmony. What could be better?
Now it's time for community life. And we went to you, our community, and said, what is a practice or thing you've done that has helped you grieve the loss of a loved one? And Laura said, finding a symbol that represents their beautiful personhood. And when I see that image, I remember their wonderful soul. For me, it's a monarch butterfly. When one of my besties died of breast cancer, every time a butterfly is near, I feel she is near and rejoicing over our lives too. Amanda said, I got my dad's last ECG, or heartbeat, made into a necklace that I never take off. Every year on my mum's birthday, I buy her some flowers she would have adored, or light a candle, listen to her favourite songs, and spend the day remembering her and being grateful for the years I had with her. This practice helps me hold her memory and is quite meditative in itself. Michelle says, writing was my biggest salvation after my mum passed away 3 years ago, and still to this day I continue to write. It's my true passion in life. Grief is a roller coaster of a ride, for sure. The ebbs and flows of life take us on some incredibly challenging times in this lifetime. I got a tattoo of her signature and flowers that grew in her garden with a bee, which is a messenger between the worlds in Celtic mythology. That's Sandra. And Lydia said, I tend to spend the whole day or two drawing, painting a portrait of them. It helps me focus, connect, feel. I helped a friend dye a funeral shroud for her mum, who was also a good friend of mine. Being actively involved in the preparation of a funeral, especially with a creative kaupapa, is extremely healing. If you have the opportunity to be involved in death care, take it. And I kept my mother-in-law's jewellery and coats for my daughter to wear when she gets older. She would have spoilt my kid. My husband and I buy fancy cakes and pastry when we can. It's something fun we used to do. And Karen, who is grieving her own dying, sent this message. Being in the position of incurable disease, death is closer than I ever thought. But it's a blessing because I get to make my wrongs right. It leads me towards who I want to be. Because of reflecting on what I want my legacy to be, I do life with more intention. Thanks, Karen. Now, as is our practice, it's time to light a candle. And as I open this matchbox, something I notice is there is only one match left. The other one is spent. And sometimes grief can leave us feeling a little spent. The flame took. And this is a candle with 3 wicks, as you know. And so I'm lighting 1 wick for those who are lost to me. I'm lighting a wick for the grief that I feel for them. And I'm lighting the 3rd and final wick for the memory of having them in my life, for all that they brought. And look, it took me a few goes to blow out the candle, but life is like this. It's really not perfect. And grief is messy and complicated sometimes. And every single thing in that matchbox has now been used up. And yet one of the wicks is blown out. And I'm okay with it. I'm just going to put it over there and let it be, and let it be enough. Coming up, I speak with Reverend Heike Pomare, formerly Māori chaplain at Dunedin Hospital. But before that, here's a sacred text, a piece from the book My Inner Sky by Mari Andrew.
It was a familiar feeling. When I was grieving the loss of my father, from whom I'd been estranged for 6 years, nothing seemed like the correct thing to do. Going to his funeral would be every bit as uncomfortable as not going. Missing him felt as inappropriate as not missing him. Crying felt as insincere as not crying. For a few months, I lived in a constant state of, am I grieving correctly? I eventually decided not to go to my dad's funeral. Still, I longed for a ritual to mark my grief, his legacy, and this turning point in my life. Humans need ritual. We came up with it a long time ago. The first evidence of intentional burial goes back 300,000 years. There's never been a culture that didn't develop its own ceremonies. So why don't we have more alternatives for all these different life scenarios? We're just really going to use a one-size-fits-all way of mourning the dead? People are complex and varied. We don't magically turn into saints the moment we die. Amazingly enough, I didn't instantly adore my father the moment after his last breath. I was still mad. Still am. I needed a way to memorialize my father on my own terms. I thought that would help me to honor all the good things that he gave me without faking anything. A few months after his blizzard weekend death, DC had begun to thaw and there were little pink buds on every city tree. I decided a spring brunch would be a really nice party to have. I lived in a cramped studio apartment, so my friend with a house offered her living room. I asked my friend Vasu, who sang in a gospel choir, to perform my favorite song about death, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And my friend Amanda sang a Sufjan Stevens song about complicated grief. I supplied mimosas and fancy pastries from the popular new bakery in my neighborhood, and my friends drank and ate as I told a story about how my dad had introduced music to me through ABC by the Jackson 5. I asked a couple friends to do readings, one from the movie Manhattan and one from Mad Men. These all felt very my dad, and they felt very me. I gave a short spiel about how scent triggers our memories and let everyone make their own scented water to spray on their pillowcases or in the air of their homes. I don't know why, but it seemed like the thing to do.
It's very lovely to be talking to you today, Reverend Heike Pomare. Can we take you back to your time as a chaplain? And for somebody who doesn't know, what is the role of a chaplain in a hospital in your context?
The role of a chaplain is to come alongside people and meet them where they are. And whatever that looks like for them. So for some people it's having somebody just beside them, purely just being present. For others it involves karakia, all sorts of different things that that person needs at that time, but basically supporting them and their wairua to feel safe in that environment.
Today we're talking about rites of passage, and it's kind of obvious that different cultures do things differently, right? There's bar mitzvahs and there's corroborees and there's also there's like rites into manhood or into womanhood or into getting married or into having a baby or into and there are rituals around and rites of passage around death. And yet it feels like from my perspective, it feels like there's quite a narrow path. It's like we just don't have quite enough sometimes to speak to the need of humans for what you're talking about, being with one another.
I think it depends also where that is happening. So if you are dying at home or your loved one is dying at home as opposed to dying in a hospital room or ED, or in, say, like a place like hospice, they're very different spaces and they hold very different energies in those different places. So in hospice, you can provide that sort of peace and that quiet, and you've generally had a bit of time to get to know the whānau and the person who is dying and understand what their needs are and be able to facilitate that as a quiet, peaceful place. Some people want to die by themselves. Some people want whānau around. Some whānau are not able to be around the one that's dying because they haven't experienced death before and it's frightening. So there's lots of different environments, whereas in ED, it's so busy and there is sort of everybody rushing in and out, and the whānau can often be pushed to the side. So it's being then that calm person that's just there and able to be with the one who is passing away, and also there to stand with the whānau as their world is being pulled apart, because generally if you're in ED, you didn't see this coming.
So is there an example that comes to mind as far as your experience of when you were able to be there and what it meant to the person, or what you think how it impacted that person's experience?
Well, as a hospice nurse, I've been with many people and their whānau as they passed away. I had a family ring up from the hospital, actually, and they just wanted, their mother was deeply religious in her younger years as a Catholic woman. And as she had gone through her years, she has sort of moved a bit away from her faith and sort of kept it in the background. And so when the family rang me, she was in those last hours and unconscious. And I asked the whānau, would they prefer a priest to come? Because often with the Catholic faith, you will have your father come and say the last rites and things. And the family just wanted a chaplain to be there and to have a prayer and to be with them. And so it was sort of 2 a.m. in the morning, and I popped up there, and we just spent the next 4 hours sitting, and we talked about that woman's amazing life and their journey with their mum, and remembered wonderful things about her, and had a bit of a prayer time. And for them, that was what they needed. And I also made sure that I honoured her Catholic faith as best as I could, because I'm not a Catholic priest. So I did my best to honour her and her faith while providing what the family had asked for, and they found that very helpful.
Yeah, there's something, I mean, peace and quiet and calm has come up a lot. I'd love to play you a song now. It's by a New Zealand band called Tiny Ruins. It's called The Crab /Water Baby. And the lyrics are, they're searching, I think. I think the writer is sort of searching, maybe for solace, maybe for comfort, maybe for rescue. But it speaks to a little bit what we have been talking about. So let's have a listen together and then we can riff off this.
Around the cove walking, that's where I found him. Upside down in the leaving tide, spun out and prone, the crab lay there reaching, casting off his hardened shell. I said, dude, I think I know how you're feeling. You know it's plain for all to see. You cannot help but speak about it. It's our insides and now we're translucency, goddamn permeable. We're translucency, goddamn permeable. I need a ceremony, I need a ritual, I need a ceremony, I need a ritual.
Do you have any thoughts straight off the bat?
It talks about vulnerability to me, really, and being really exposed. I guess whether you're the person who is passing away or you're the person whose loved one is passing away, you are in your most vulnerable, exposed place there. And people do see through you. It's very hard to cover up your emotions and things. You are quite exposed in that space.
Maybe there's a relief in knowing that. Maybe even as I hear you say it, there's something that lands for me, that whether you're the person who is in the process of dying or the person who is in the process of losing a loved one or somebody very important to you, then you are vulnerable. Both of you are vulnerable. You're so right. The lyric is, it's our insides and now we're translucency. And I'm like, wow, that's a really confronting line in so many ways, but it does have that sense of how exposed we are, I guess, and how raw things can be emotionally and mentally.
And it's quite scary for most people, and it's a very vulnerable, scary space to be. And I guess that's why as a chaplain and a minister, it's a real privilege and an honour to be in that space with those people, being able to be that gentle, quiet space that actually it's okay not to be okay. That's the normal. We run a world where we think we have to have all our ducks in an order and be strong and all of that. And actually in this space, it's really okay not to be okay. And it's okay to not know what the next minute's going to bring. That's normal to be in that space, and having people understand that that is normal. We don't have to have it all together. We don't have to be strong. The tears can come. They don't warn you. And that's normal. That's okay. Normalising death, I guess, really. Normalising that we're all going to go through this one day.
Yeah, we are.
On either side, we'll either be the one who's dying or the one who's losing a loved one, but every one of us is going to face this one day.
Yeah. And how do you attach to something that's so permanent, final and, confronting, and you don't get a dress rehearsal, you don't get a pre-run.
No, you don't.
Yeah. There's another lyric, I need a ceremony, I need a ritual. And so I guess I'm wondering, have you in your time as a chaplain observed anything outside of what we understand as celebrations and funerals and grieving officially? Have you seen or observed any rituals that struck you as, just like, that I can see this person is embracing this way of being in this moment, like that you thought were good or effective?
Often after they've passed away, finding your place, whether it's at the beach or in the bush, but having that space where you can just be and just have that quiet. For me, I've seen the benefit for many people of just giving yourself that grace and that space to just be and be sad and be whatever the emotions are that are flowing at that moment. And that is your time away from the busyness of the rest of the world.
Because it's not just sadness, is it? It can be anger, and it can be a whole raft of emotions.
And they don't necessarily warn you when they're coming. So that's where that vulnerability comes through, and that translucency of actually, you could be happy one moment laughing, and then something happens and it triggers you right back somewhere, and you're crying or you're angry. And they don't flow in a nice, gentle orderedness. They just come as waves, and you're never quite sure which wave is coming. So you just, I guess, find the way to ride that wave and know that it'll go and there will be another one. But you'll learn better and better, I guess, to ride those waves and accept that that's now part of your life coming. Yeah.
And I understand that you're speaking from personal experience, because in the chat just before we started recording, you mentioned that you'd lost your own husband only 2 years ago.
Yeah, not quite 2 years ago, but yeah, I lost my husband. Yeah, so I've looked after people, and I've walked and walking, will forever walk it as well. So whether you have lost someone or not, I don't think it makes any difference, because you never know what it is for that person. It doesn't matter that I've lost my husband. It doesn't mean I know how somebody else feels who's lost their husband, because we are individual and we travel that journey separately. And it may not be a person. We're here talking about people, but it might be your pet. It might be, for some people, they are their people. And we don't necessarily look after people in their grief space well enough. You lose a partner, and there comes you lost your husband, you lost your wife. But for some people, their children are their cat or their dog or whatever they hold close. And their grief is just as real as somebody who's lost their loved one. So I think honouring people where they're at rather than thinking they should act a certain way is really important.
There's a Korean-American chaplain called J.S. Parks, and he's a hospital chaplain, and he saw his role as being that of a grief catcher. How does that resonate with you?
A grief catcher. I would say a grief holder.
Oh, nice.
Because you hold that space for that person. So that's how I see. I like that. That's cool.
Thank you for your time. I feel calmer already. Just chatting with you makes me. I just feel like I just want to be present to the sunshine. I think it is kind of a profound countercultural invitation, the invitation to be present to whatever is happening and to accept whatever is happening. Not that we don't take any action, but that we start from a place of standing still and saying, yes.
Yeah, I think that is the most important. Yeah.
Ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure chatting.
Ngā mihi. Thank you very much.
After our conversation, Heike sent us a list of some of the rituals that she's been involved in with her role as a chaplain at the time of death or just after. So here's what she had to say. For some Māori, it is to tuku wairua, which is a karakia or prayer spoken at the time of death or shortly after. It's a series of prayers for releasing the person's wairua from their tinana, their body, and guiding it to where their wairua or spirit needs to go. We also open a window if possible, straight after the person has died. Both Pākehā and Māori, again, the releasing of their wairua. It's not always easy in a hospital, which doesn't have opening windows necessarily. For parents who have had a miscarriage, sometimes having something tangible is helpful. So the weaving of a basket or choosing a special container and collecting special kohatu or rocks to go in the basket or container. Then naming the baby and having a small service to remember and acknowledge the baby that has died. The parents can then choose what they would like to do with the basket. Some keep it in a special place as a remembrance. Heike prefers to help the parents weave a basket as it's very therapeutic. It's a time of remembering and, if they want, of talking about their baby and their loss. I also want to acknowledge at this point the song that we played by Tiny Ruins. Thank you for providing us with a clip of the crab/water baby. It's so beautiful. They are playing shows in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland soon before heading off to Europe on tour. So be sure to check out their wonderful mahi.
Sunday Sanctuary, your mug of goodness.
I hope that this episode has offered you some ideas or comfort to acknowledge that where you're at is okay, and some ideas about how you might celebrate, remember, commemorate the passing of a loved one. Now we're going to reflect on the ancient practice of communion, and it's a ritual instituted by Jesus Christ on the night before he was killed. And I mean, in the Christian tradition, this feels like an ultimate rite of passage. A ritual around death, right? So knowing he's going to be executed the next day, Jesus asks his friends who are gathered for a meal to keep this up as a regular practice, to eat the bread and drink the wine to remember him. Then he says this kind of odd line. He says, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. He essentially looks forward to the long-awaited day when God will set everything to rights, the day when injustice and pain and even death itself will be undone. For centuries now, Christians have taken comfort from that promise. And in the midst of this ritual of remembering the death of Jesus, we look forward in hope to a time when another scripture says, God will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. So that future hope is held up in the midst of this moment of intense grief. That's what this ritual invites us into. It's a space of pain and loss, and it's more than that. It's a ritual of remembrance of the man who said, Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. There's hope ahead. There's goodness on the horizon. The grief right now is real. It's also not the whole story. It's been a tender, beautiful, powerful show to be a part of. This podcast has seen me in tears as well as in wonder. And so I would love you to, I guess, take it in, leave what doesn't serve you, drink up what works for you. And as we like to finish, here's a benediction. This is a benediction for Sacred Goodbyes, written by Kate Bowler. Today we are drawn into the remembrance. The complexity of love and loss both warms our hearts and chills our bones. Invisible connections are revealed, just as the light of the sun illuminates the lines of a web. We see that our lives are connected to those who are no longer here. Blessed are we who acknowledge the impressions made by those who've passed a child's nose, a joke carried on, a chair left in our name, a story that we now tell. Blessed are you who have learned to make sense of a world that doesn't make sense without them. And blessed are you, with grief present still, who carry the weight of surviving a loved one, of keeping the memories and sharing the stories. Oh God, you alone know the whole of it. You know their sufferings, their joys, their hopes, their winding paths, and every movement of their souls. Restore our souls, even as you receive theirs. Welcome them in with the kind of embrace we wish we could give them. Blessed is the time they were given and the time you now have, whether in life or in death. Love is there. Ka kite anō.